Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Tuesday. What do we do on Tuesday?
We talk about art across cultures. Isn't that what we do every? No, we just do this week's Tuesday. What do you usually do on Tuesday?
Tuesday should be deemed as a rest day, I think. I seem to be busier on the weekends than I've ever been before, and so Tuesday should be my Saturday. I've just made that decree, which you can, of course, when times are flexible and you have a creative mind and you can just make things up.
As I do every day, and I made up today that today's going to be smooth.
It is going to be smooth.
It's going to be smooth.
Yesterday we talked about the music. Wonderful guest, Sepalot, Sebastian. And today we're talking about the written word, its power, its effect, how it may be approached, expressed in different cultures. And we have, of course, don't want to just hear from us boring guys. We have a special guest and our wonderful friend, Brother Joel.
Good morning to the West Coast, Brother Joel.
Good morning. How are you guys doing? I would never call you all boring, that's for sure. So, not in my experience of you.
You'd be the first not to. Ask my kids about that.
You know, Christian, you said smooth. Today is going to be smooth. You know, that's my nickname. So
is that so?
Yeah, my family and friends have called me that for a while. So here we are. Smooth day.
So. Yeah, I manifested that and it appeared.
There you go.
Absolutely. Well, welcome, Joel. Thank you very much for taking the time. This is great. And Joel is one of our special friends in the world. In the work that we do in the intercultural field, he is somebody that many people look up to. They look to for guidance. They look to for mentorship but in the background, of course, which is usually what art is relegated to, unfortunately, sometimes, we find that the people around us have some wonderful skills, really deep reflective abilities, and Joel is no exception because he brings to the world poetry, writing in general, and he takes that to the world in his work. So tell us a little about your work, Joel, and what you do. And perhaps lead us into that conversation about how you express yourself in the written form.
Sure. So first of all, thank you to you both for having me, and hello to all the people wherever you might be tuning in. I would say art is less about what you do, it's about your being. And I think that's the first way that I would describe it. So frankly, if stripped of all the other wonderful things that you said about me that I paid you to say, the thing I would say, if there's one thing that I would describe, one way in which I would describe myself more so than anything else, is as a poet. And I've been doing poetry. I've been a poet now for as long as I can remember. Like I said, it's one of those things that is who you are. And I started writing poetry when I was a young boy, and writing short stories and things that my mother probably thought, where is this coming from? And started to get some recognition for it. And then continued writing especially when I came out as a gay man, and at that point it was a catharsis. It was salve for the soul. And then I just continued writing and started writing about anything and everything, from family to lived experiences to romance to nature to politics to travel. You know, it's about life. And so when I make time, I usually get in the studio. I've done open mics. I put out several CDs. And once COVID is over, or the restrictions are lessened and loosened, then I'll be going back into the studio to work on my next project. So it's been with me forever. And I think long after I'm doing everything else, this is the thing that I'll continue to be doing. It's a way to help me stay in tune with myself. So it's fun. and it's nice to share with people who also have that bent and that appreciation for art as well.
I'm curious, Joel, because I did not grow up in a family that fostered or encouraged creative work. I grew up in a fairly working class family, and poetry, I wouldn't want to label it as such, but to me, it appeared as something frivolous or something that you do once you've accomplished everything else in life. That is something, not something that would be my first goal to accomplish. And of course, this is my mind freak. I'm not saying this is what it is. So I'm curious, in your upbringing, in your family, when you began being a poet, how was that received? How did your family, how did your friends receive that?
I don't think a lot of people knew about it, but I would say to you, but I was certainly exposed to art because art is the language of resistance. Art is the language of protest. Art is the way for many communities, particularly the African American community, the LGBTQ community, and communities all across the world, to find their voice and to reclaim who they are. So, you know, when you're told collectively that you can't do certain things, you can't occupy certain industries or work as a profession or live in certain areas, or even have freedoms, you can still hum, you can still sing, you can still write. And so that's how poetry was introduced to me. When you think about people like Sonia Sanchez, or you think about Langston Hughes and all the wonderful poets from the Harlem Renaissance, and writers like Zora Neale Hurston, and, you know, the list goes on and on. So for me, it was a way that it connected me to the past. It connected me to the narrative of being an African American, also being a queer man. And my family, I think, you know, they would watch me, and they still do. If they see me start to scribble on notes or receipts or napkins or wherever, they know that, oh, he's just gone off into his zone. Sometimes I'll pull out my phone now, and I have to write things. I'll even get out of bed at some points, because if something comes to me, I call it that divine download. You got to go with it. And so, yeah, I do think there were probably some conversations of like, no, what are you going to do with this? Maybe from a few people, but no one really, but people were appreciative. And actually, you know, different events and family gatherings and occasions, they would encourage me to, you know, share something. My sister's a really great writer too. And so it was definitely nurtured. And I think they knew that they didn't see me pursuing it as a full-time career, but I don't think they would have been opposed had I said I wanted to be a full-time writer. Now I see that writing is essential to what I do, in addition to the consulting and the other work that we all share.
So, thank you for explaining this, because that brings it home, at least in part for me. So I'm gonna continue on that path for just one more second.
Sure.
So in popular culture, it's fairly easy to get an audience through mediums that are popularly received. So whether it be music, you have many outlets for that, whether it be movie, TV, video creation, that there are outlets for that. Sure, there's lots of gatekeepers for those channels. I don't want to downplay that, but that is perceived as something easy to consume, and people from all socioeconomic backgrounds, from all educational backgrounds, are happily consuming that type of art form. Now, with poetry, I would suspect it is not quite as easy. It takes an audience that is willing to consume and look for the art. Or is that different in your experience?
Yeah, I think what you said is true. I will say that in mainstream circles, you know, people want what's quick and easy. They want something that perhaps is not challenging them enough. I mean, and a lot of art has become very commodified, right? So it's about what can you sell? And I think just with society in general, there's the stuff that I think is more superficial, that doesn't really push boundaries and envelopes, and people who maybe don't want to go a little bit deeper. But art is one of those things that is all around us, regardless of whether we appreciate it or not. And I would say to you, it depends on the audience. So there's some people who are not looking to be introspective or reflective, but I think all of us do. I think all of us are artists in a particular way. I think all of us do have an artistic ability and talent. It's just something that's been it's not been nurtured or cultivated. We've been told that we need to, you know, make money and build an empire. So I would say that for true art, and I think if you talk to artists, even those who have been very successful, and some of the people we may know as household names, they will all share with you the same belief too, that art is something that you really have to fight for in society. You have to really fight for your authentic voice and your place, and to do it in your own way, and to have agency, because art is actually the most empowered. The best thing about art is that it's empowering, and that it gives you the space for agency. So I've had those conversations where people are saying, what are you trying to do? Could you say it differently? But I think particularly in the time that we are in right now, people want art. They want some truth telling, which is what art is, because of what's going on. And they may not have the words, and they may not want to regurgitate the news, but they're looking for things to be shared in a different way. And art is one of those things that it can instantly grab you. Like, it doesn't, you hear a piece of music, you hear a piece of art, you see a painting, it instantly grabs you. It doesn't need to do anything more. And it can do it in a way that accesses all of your senses. I mean, that's the best art. It's not just about, it's not news. So it's not, it doesn't have to be coming from just an auditory or visual format, but there's something that's supposed to really speak to your soul. And I do find that people are into it. And I think that people who are not naturally attuned to it just have to wake up to and reawaken and reimagine the part of themselves that really I do think will speak to art. And it's all about how it's packaged, because when I was younger, a lot of the art that I heard was basically by, white straight men who had a certain position. And there's nothing against white straight men doing art, but there was no diversity in the offerings. And I didn't see a lot of art in school that reflected me. I got another education when I went home, when my parents and family would say, well, have you checked this out? Or do you know about this? Or they would play and share things like, well, who is this? And then all of a sudden, I'm listening to Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and I'm reading about, reading from Countee Cullen and other artists around the world. And then, of course, you go across the world and you hear about artists in places like Nigeria, like Fela, and that really opened my eyes to different experiences around the world, and Bob Marley. But I mean, it goes on and on and on. And so when you see yourself reflected in the art, and it makes you more appreciative of the art, and then you realize art is one of those universal things that connects all of us, no matter what our background is, and it transcends language and time and context and circumstance. So I think people, we, particularly in the West, just have to kind of wake up to the fact that we can access our heart and our bodies as well, not just our mind. And when you really engage good art, it's not just academic, it's not just intellectual, it's also a soulful, spiritual experience. And that's why, for example, my brand name for my art is Souletry, Souletry. Why? Because I think poetry is a language of the soul. It gets beyond the superficial and this stuff that we focus on. It gets you into, who you are as a transcendent being that goes beyond, race and gender and sexual orientation and gender identity and nationality and all those things.
I love it. And you're someone who travels the world, literally travels the world. Well, when we were traveling the world, of course.
Right, I can't do it so now. Yeah, I'm missing the world right now. So I wish I could get out of
really, you take that. Not only you don't just travel for fun, with a backpack, and you actually go there and expound knowledge to the world through your profession, work as a professor. I know you've done it in France and other places. How do you I'm kind of interested in terms of how you approach a student, a room full of students. Do you use your poetry? Do you use your writing to frame some of the concepts, what you're teaching, and to make them understand?
Right. My students think I'm crazy. I'm just going to tell you that straight up. So when they come in the room, so first of all, I like to play music when they come in, just to get them stimulated. So I've had people come in and be like, is this the right place? And I say, well, it depends on what place you're looking for. And then they say, oh, is this whatever class? And I say, yep. And you can see them looking around like, okay, maybe this is a joke. They're on Candid Camera, which is an old US show that would play jokes on people and then record it. And so there's that. And then with the courses I teach is all about incorporating creativity into leadership, and helping people understand that the creative elements that we think about that are typically reserved for artists should also be brought into leadership. I mean, so there's two different ways of looking at creativity. It's creativity in terms of bringing something new into creation, which I think is important for us as thought leaders to be thinking about. But then there's creativity, which is accessing different modalities, because I never was one of those students who just wanted to, do point and click and look at the screen and have someone lecture to me. How boring is that? So I try to use all modalities as I can, whether it's improv, storytelling, theater, music, art, graphic recording. And that doesn't mean that I'm well versed in all of those things, but it just means that I want to free up and create a liberated space for people to use what works for them, and so they can access it. And I encourage them to do that. And typically they go from thinking I'm crazy to thinking I'm cool, then they think I'm some type of genius. And I say to them, it's not about me being a genius, it's about me giving you space to tap into your own genius. And that's what they're typically doing. And that's what I try to do in those spaces, is create space for people to be their most brilliant stuff, because then they're teaching me. And as a professor and as a global citizen, it's less about me and what I can bring to a certain place. It's more about what I can learn and what I can help to facilitate in terms of people's own experiences. And so that's how I feel like I learn, and I'm a student and I get a lot back. So I think most of my students have really enjoyed me, but I think a lot of them definitely get stretched outside their comfort zone, because once again, we're teaching people from a societal level not to tap into that. And I hope with everything happening right now that we can break out of those confines and allow people to be more of who they are and to tap into their creativity.
Very cool.
That was smooth. I like
that was smooth.
At some stage, they must just think you're smooth, man. That would be it.
Well, sometimes they do, because they're like, oh my God, I'm sitting here and I'm doing some type of storytelling that I didn't think I had it in me, or I'm sharing some poetry. So you slip it in, and you help to build this safety and the comfort, and then before you know it, they're doing their thing.
Well, and isn't it partly because we've been conditioned in school or in families or in our social circles that this type of expression is not rewarded, right? It at least in most within my circle of friends and the socioeconomic environment that I experienced growing up, this was not necessarily encouraged, and that's why probably your students, I would suspect, had a similar experience growing up, and they first think Brother Joel's crazy, and after that they think, oh, smooth. But I think that's a great transition for all of us in this field, is to go from crazy to smooth.
Yeah, that is something to live up to. As Ben Zander talks very much like you, it's about finding what's in the person, right? The possibility of what the person can achieve. He assigns an A to all his students the very first class, and then he says, don't tell me how you're going to live up to it. Tell me how you're going to live into it. Right? That's it's amazing. It's a transformation. It is. Monica says, will you have Joel show his impact? I'm not sure what the question is, but if I might kind of lead it in my own way and say to Joel, do you have a piece that you could you could read for us at least?
Sure.
Did you come prepared?
Sure. This is an oldie but goodie. It's this is from 2009, but I think it's kind of relevant to today. So this is from a poem I wrote called 360. It says, tell me what should it hurt a man to hope? Tell me how should humanity cope? The inquisitive child asks, is truth supposed to be for a show? Are you more interested in what you believe and less of what you know? It seems people believe too much and know too little. Love is playing second fiddle in this kingdom of hard minds. Once upon a time, Aristophanes said, world is king, having driven out Zeus. And today it seems souls reek and minds are too loose. But I can't be an island unto myself. True love doesn't act with stealth. It is bold in its voyage. So I skate in the shadows. I skim treetops. I rattle cages. I slip into the pages of dirty manifestos, where zealots would choose to strike fear. The world's heartbeat is what I hear. I come to commune, knowing I can't be immune. Together, soon, we shall all find peace in 360.
Very cool. That line, you could have written that today, that line about believing too much and not knowing, and I paraphrased it wrong. But isn't that what we see today, right? People are just putting out what they believe, not not what they know, right? They're calling it what they know, but it really is just what they believe in their, driven by their own, that matches their own biases. It's amazing. Yeah. And that was written 11 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. Long time ago at this point. So, but
that was one of your high school projects, was it? That one?
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Yeah, maybe when I was 6 or 7. Yeah, between building blocks and Sandlot. Yeah.
So you said your parents listened to Coltrane and Miles. So has your musical socialization also progressed? I mean, in the timeline, progressed to contemporary African American music? And tagging on to that question, has anyone ever laid a beat to that poem?
Well, they certainly. Well, I'll go in reverse order. So this is on my second CD. So there's a nice hip hop type beat to it, because what I started to do is go from writing poems to writing tracks, or I wouldn't call them songs per se, but it's very similar to, spoken word, which is what that is very similar to rap. Rap is rhythmic American poetry, which many people don't know what that stands for. So they hear rap and they're like, oh, I didn't know that that's what it stands for. Like, yes, rap is poetry. And what I love about it is that it brings a rhythm and a soulful element to it that's supposed to really get you into your body. And so, yes, a lot of what I've written, sometimes they're a cappella pieces. They're not designed to have any music. The words stand on their own. Sometimes the words are calling for music. In terms of my musical taste, my parents, my father was more into country. My mom was one who was into everything from, George Clinton, Rick James, Whitney Houston, Anita Baker, to Michael Jackson, Prince. I got into a little bit of, the 60s Motown sound. And then
I heard a bit of Jill Scott-Heron there.
Oh, look at you. See, you said you were boring. See, you're not boring. See, you got some flavor to you. So, there's Last Poets, Gil Scott-Heron, I mean, all those people. Then there's contemporary artists, and then of course hip hop, and then there's world music and Latin soul and music from all around the world. And actually, I find that when I leave the States, people are more interested and in tune with soul music because there's less of a stigma. Like in the United States, there's always been a stigma around certain types of music, particularly if it's pushing the edge. And then you go to Europe and you go to other parts of the world, and like, oh no, play that. We like that. Do more. So I'm a big audiophile. So I'm always looking for music. I'm always searching for new things to listen to, new sounds and whatnot. And so my music library is pretty vast, and I owe that to Mom. So Mom helped me with that.
Good. It's important that parents lay the musical foundation. We did that with our kids. So sometimes they hate us for this, and I'm happily vindicated when years later they listen to stuff that I presented to them when they're toddlers, and then they hate it through their early teens, and now they're listening to it and then all right, the seed popped. And to your point with Europe and soul, I think I may have mentioned this before in this format. The first time I recognized that in the United States there is somewhat of a racial issue, to put it mildly, was when I first came to the US as a foreign exchange student into northwestern Minnesota, and the overwhelmingly white students in high school asked me what kind of music I liked. And coming from Germany, I gave them my list of music that I liked in the late 80s, and they gave me that look and were flabbergasted, and their comment was, well, that's all black music. And my response was, oh, and that matters how? I did not understand that comment until they said, well, and here's our laundry list of music acts that we like and we thought you would like too. And I was like, what is this? I don't know what you're talking about, and no, this is not my cup of tea. So different culture, different cultural and art environment makes for completely different tastes and approaches to certain genres or certain messaging, right?
Right. So I'm curious, where in Northwest Minnesota, were you at Crookston, or we'd have to talk about that offline? Where in Northwest?
Northwest. I went to high school in Detroit Lakes, about 40 minutes east of the Fargo-Moorhead area. So those of you who watched the movie Fargo, yep, it is like that.
Oh, well, bless your heart, Christian. Because I went to school at the University of Minnesota, but art is yeah, it's something that once again, if we look at it in the right way, it's something that has universal application. And traditionally, yes, people would look at things like, I remember a time when R&B was kind of taboo, and then of course, country and R&B have similar roots, but you remember rock and roll was taboo at some point, and then it became whitewashed, and then it became palatable for the mainstream. So then you start hearing about people like Elvis Presley and whatnot, but
Yeah, as long as it wasn't Chuck Berry,
right,
it's
or
okay.
Little Richard,
Yeah,
right,
yeah. God
right, and
forbid.
right, and then R&B, we have artists like Justin Timberlake who've taken it to a certain level or to a certain audience, but then we've ignored, a lot of the originators and a lot of the people who've done it. And hip hop is in the same thing, where once again you see people like Eminem who, and no shade to Eminem, but people who have certain cachet to popularize certain things and to say certain things that Black artists didn't have, and it will continue and with other things. But I love music from all over the place. I love music from, a lot of Brit rock, the Rolling Stones, Sting. I wasn't big into the Beatles. No one hate me, but I certainly appreciate their influence. But like I said, everywhere I go, I'm always interested in the music and the culture and the rhythms of the community, because that tells you a lot about what's happening from an anthropological standpoint, from a political standpoint, also from a social standpoint.
Yeah, but when you use a Black American bring up British rock and quote the Stones, then obviously there's a deeper connection than Beatles, because the Stones music is all based on Delta blues, right? So
that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
This is the story that art tells us, if we want to listen to it, that there is a global interconnection, usually based on routes that were established because of slavery or because of other nefarious reasons why these were established in the first place. But on the back of these malignant paths grew something of global beauty, and that is something that we should never forget when we look at art, right?
Right. We can't separate, art is also a reflection of history. I remember I took, for example, an African American literature course in college at the University of Minnesota. And the way the teacher was teaching the course, he was talking about the syntax and the composition and the format of the words. And I said, well, and I remember he and I had a disagreement, because I said to him, you're teaching this from an English perspective, but you're not teaching this from a historical perspective. You have to honor both. And I remember when Prince transition, he died, that's the word I use, and I remember there were some people online who were saying, I didn't really realize that Prince was really Black, like, I don't know if I can really like, they're going back to his catalog. I'm like, well, once again, even in the way that a person sings, even in the way that they strum the guitar, even in the way that they flip their words, there's a message there. There's something that is reflecting their experience, and we can't separate the two. And I know a lot of people have tried to do that, where they listen to these records and they listen to art and they go to see theater and plays and paintings, and they want to separate it, but you can't. And that's the beauty of art, is that if you're really paying attention to it, that you are called to recognize their cultural experience and their cultural perspective, and also your place in it. And some people are very, try to divorce themselves from that. I recall Do the Right Thing when it came out, and there's a scene in Do the Right Thing where one of the sons from Sal's Pizzeria is saying, well, those guys, they're beyond Black, or I don't see them as Black. So he's talking about Michael Jackson and Prince and whatnot. Well, Michael Jackson, learned his dance techniques from quote unquote ghetto children, which would be somebody like me, although I certainly couldn't dance like Michael Jackson, but I can hold my own. But the things that they talk about, the things they emulated, came from somewhere. And so there's this idea for some people to try to separate the two, but we really need to recognize that art is, you can't separate the political, the social message, and the social seasoning that is imparted on art from the community and the culture from which it's derived.
Which is why it's saddening to see that a society like ours, and when I say ours, it's the one that the three of us live in, the United States, is devoting less and less resources to art education, art appreciation, and art financing. So I think whenever they burn the books, as they would say in Germany, when they started burning the books, or when they start hiding art and the creative process from the young people, that's when society is in trouble.
Oh, well, and I think it's by design, right? I mean, we've seen this trend over the last 20 years of getting rid of art education, humanities, any type of progressive education or liberal arts education to focus on business. And I say it just like that, and not that business is not important, but trying to basically make people functionaries of capitalism and make people functionaries of a white supremacy movement where it's just about how much money you can make, and fitting people into a mold and a model that robs them of their complete humanity. And that's why we have to fight for that. And I also wonder and worry about students who don't have a well-rounded education, because there's many different levels and forms of intelligence, and artistic intelligence is one of them. And sometimes using these different creative elements is what helps. It makes it easier to teach things like math, and to teach social sciences, and to teach writing and all that stuff. But it's by design. But I think there's a pushback. And I know that for many parents like yourself, and many of us who are just, I won't call myself an elder, but many of us who are in the community, there's the education that you get in the schoolhouse, and there's the education that you get at home, where you say, we're going to listen to this. Like my mom would say to me, I remember once she came into my room and I was doing something, watching a basketball game, and she said, I want you to turn on the TV to this documentary. And it was Eyes on the Prize, and it was a documentary, and it was a film that talked about the history and the struggles of the civil rights movement. And, so I think we have to be revolutionary and countercultural in how we approach this, and also push back and not allow our education system just to basically put out robots and drones and be like factories, which is what essentially they have become. The movement, whether we're talking about just human rights, Black Lives Matter, all of this stuff is on every front and is in every facet of American society. There's not one place that you can look at and say, we don't have to be more mindful of equity and social justice and humanity and all the isms, anti-racism, but also anti-sexism, anti-heterosexism, anti-ableism, anti-classism. All these things are things that we need to attend to in every aspect of our life, including education. That's really important. I'm glad that you brought that up.
Smooth.
Man, that was great. I mean,
can we talk another 3 hours, please?
Yeah,
I would love to. We'll have to find some time to do that, but I would love to do that. Art was my saving grace. I think that's one thing I would say to you, is that as a young Black gay man from the north side of Milwaukee, who didn't feel like he fit into any place, and our friend Dr. Monica Duvall has talked about doing her work on third culture kids, and as I started to read more of her dissertation, her work, I feel like a third culture kid, and felt like one living where I did, because I feel like I was in neither place. I was neither fully embraced in the African American community, never fully embraced in the LGBTQ community, and frankly, I've never really felt fully American, which is probably why when I go overseas, people are like, wow, we're shocked that you're an American. So poetry, I mean, they do. And poetry is one of those things that allows you to, when I didn't feel like I could connect with other people, it was the pen and the paper that allowed me to feel comfortable and safe. And what humbled me and what also helped me to grow was when I started traveling more and recognizing that a lot of people could relate to what I was sharing, and I could relate to a lot of what they were saying, regardless of where we came from. And also recognizing that a lot of the things that I've experienced are things that other people have experienced, and also learning from their stories and their experiences too, and recognizing that that's part of my truth too. But I don't know where I'd be without poetry. And I wouldn't know where I'd be without art. It's the one thing that helped me to see myself, to feel myself, and to understand myself at a deeper level than anything else that I could have gotten. No textbook, no theoretical framework, no quote unquote intercultural model gave me the information and the knowledge and the courage and freedom that art did. Art still does that. And that's why, frankly, I probably would describe myself first and foremost as an artist before I would describe myself as anything else.
I love it. Art is your savior, people. There you have it. Thank you, Joel, for taking time. Smooth time. I loved it.
This has gone by too quickly.
Yeah.
Yes, it has. Yeah.
That's what happens when it's good. So thanks, Brother Joel. Brother Brett, you have another announcement before you send us off here, right?
Yes, if you have time, I just want to bring this up. Our and of course a wonderful friend of Joel as well, Kelly McLeod-Shingen, over on her site KMS Consulting, is hosting a live chat at the moment. It's Stories of Inclusion. She's doing a series on that. That is actually going on at the same time, and I encourage everyone to go over. And if you're watching the replay, find Kelly McLeod-Shingen on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever your favorite platform is. But that is taking place over on Facebook Live as well, and that's where I'm going. I don't know about you guys, but that's where I'm going.
And if you have any questions about just want to check in with me or learn a little bit more about my poetry, you can find me on Facebook at Joel A. Brown, LinkedIn, I think Joel A. Brown, and then my website's pneumos.com, PNEUMOS.com, or Solitree, both of which are under construction right now, but you can reach me, and also on Twitter at Joel A. Brown 7.
We'll post the links. People will be
perfect.
Able to find you.
Yeah, the Pneumos. I've just posted the Pneumos link in there as well, and we will put in the show notes. Of course, you'll be able to find that. It'll be in the comments on all the platforms. Joel, brother Joel, thank you so much. This again, it's just been too short.
Brother Brett and Brother Christian, thank you.
As always, it's impactful and insightful and profound, and we thank you so much. We're grateful for your presence, and we should do this again. That was wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right,
Stay smooth,
thank you.
people.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.